Hello everyone, we're so glad you're here. Welcome to Letters and Sciences 25 class, Creativity and Practice. Today we're live streaming and recording the event, and we're so excited to welcome Ed Campion. I want to just acknowledge that this event is co-sponsored by Berkeley Arts and Design, the Center for New Music and Audio Technology, and Cal Performances. And just a quick plug for Cal Performances, this evening there's an amazing group, Colin Curry Group, Synergy Vocals, a Steve Reich celebration. It's going to involve 18 musicians, and they're going to be playing some beautiful works. So we encourage you to go see that performance this evening, and it's partly why we have Ed here today, to really perk up your senses around music and how we think about the human in connection to our technology, the human in connection to our machines. Cal Performances co-sponsorship is part of a program called Illuminations, and this event is entitled part of the Human and Machine series. So check that out on Cal Performance's site. They have we'll have a bunch of other events connected to this theme and topic. But I'd like to introduce Ed now. His talk is titled up on the screen: Human Expression, Emotion, Technology, Machine, and Me. And Ed came up in the age in the 1970s, a time when recording technologies and new electronic music instruments were transforming the way musicians make and perform music. In this discussion today, we will engage Ed, who's the director of the Berkeley Center for New Music and Audio Technologies, and trace reoccurring stories of human technology disruptions that continue to upend and transform music and music making in our current moment. Ed is currently professor of music, composition, and director of the Center of CINMAT. And his music explores the relationships between sound and space, creations that often involve the careful mixing of acoustic instruments with emerging computer technologies. He has been active as a performing artist, composer, software developer, and collaborating artist for over 25 years. He's also a 2016 Guggenheim Fellow and has composed for the Contemporary Guggenheim Orchestra, an ensemble of 50 musicians performing on ancient Korean instruments. In 2015, the ensemble Intercontemporain co-commissioned Campion and audiovisual artist Kurt Henschlager for a 25-minute piece called Cluster X. He has worked in multimedia pieces for the Philharmonie de Paris and many other compositions and awards have been given to Ed that I won't go through in detail, but his entire biography can be found on the Arts Design website. We'll be sure to share that with you. We're just so excited to have you here, Ed. And in our class on Thursday, we explored more from the visual perspectives of film and interactivity with projection, sort of themes around how technology extends our biological body through expanding how we interact in the world with the virtual and the real, and extending what is we're capable of, looking at different ways projection can enhance the body. We also looked at the ways technology transforms the body, with looking at artists that even do very radical allowing of their bodies to be inhabited by technological machinery or mechanisms, and changing the actual tissue of the body of the human. And then also another theme of our class on Thursday was looking at how the machine and the human coming together can be part of an emergent strategy where we work to collaborate with our technology to better connect ourselves to others and to innovate new ways of using existing technology as well, thinking about ways we subvert or change, technology that can be found in just the consumer marketplace, and artists that have utilized those strategies. And also CINMAT and has built a lot of open source software and systems that are utilized by many artists, and I was going to touch on that a bit, and that ethos of the sharing and open exchange of technological making with art. So welcome, Ed. We're so happy to have you.
Okay. That's see. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so now you know I'm a composer, I'm an artist, I live in 2022 just like you, about to turn that year again. I see it's week 12, everybody's got really droopy eyes, like can we please have a break? But no, Berkeley doesn't let you have a break, you have to stay with it
All the way through the book.
just cut down on me. I heard that. So, hello, everybody fine? My main point today, I like to fly without notes. The reason I do that is because I'm a musician, I'm a performer. In order to do that, I have to connect with you. I have to talk to you. I have to share with you a few things. I'm not a scholar, I'm a performer and a composer. I've been doing this for 30 years. It was a dream of mine all of my life when I was a kid. When I turned, hello? Little text there. When I turned to my high school years, something extraordinary happened in this country that blew the top off of music. And that's what I want to talk about in the first part of my discussion. In the second part of my discussion, I want to look at a few pieces, very short, that I've done. So this is going to be a rapid flyby of a lot of different materials. Stick with me, and I think that you'll find at the end of what we're doing that you know something about sound and music that you didn't know before. And furthermore, I am hoping that you will know something that you cannot find on the web. So it is something personal in that regard. And there is my use of slashes for the title. And I just want to point out there that those aren't just random slashes. That's more like a URL. You know what a URL is. That's the basis of the internet, right? So do you know what URL stands for?
Yes.
I knew that you would. That's why I was not afraid to.
It's the Unified Record Locator.
Universal
record.
That's close. That's close. Uniform record locator. And I am the uniform record locator for the day. Okay? So I am going to control your minds with my slides. So here we go. Surrounding all of this is the topic that I know the best, which is music. But the purpose of where we're going in the next few minutes is not me. It is we. It is Professor Greg Niemeyer and Professor Lisa Wymore, and we are headed to a conversation together. We have worked together over the years in different capacities, and as colleagues for decades now. We know a lot about what goes on at UC Berkeley. We are all practicing artists, and we have all had to deal with the emergence of technology and huge cultural change. What I'm going to show you in this first part of the talk has to do with the cultural change that I experienced when I was a teenager in high school that blew my socks off and changed me and made me want to devote my life to music, which I did. On with the story. Music. Let's listen to this together, and then I'd like, there's some microphones in the house, I'd like to get some comments from you. I'm going to play you something. I want you to pay attention to the two men who are performing here. And I want you to think about just observing what they are doing and try to make some clear observation. And let's hear from you what you observed here. They are making music, I would say, or I would guess. let's have the microphone. So, Mina, I'm afraid to ask you, because we know we're going to change positions, right? You're going to give us a lecture about what we're doing. That's not what we're doing here. So somebody, just tell me something you noticed, anything about what was going on there. What did you see? What were they doing? How were they doing it? And you can use that microphone. Just, yes, right here.
It seemed like one person was leading, and then the other, like the one with the instrument that makes the higher notes was leading.
Absolutely. So there's communication going on. But what are they doing exactly? Like, what are they, how are they making those determinations?
They're breathing together.
Oh, absolutely. And did you notice that there was something special about their breathing, that they were not stopping as they played? That's really hard to do, right? They were drawing air through their nose and continuing to push air into a piece of technology that they're holding, which is well over 5,000 years, and forgive me if I don't have that correct. That's the Argul, right? And that's from the Pharaonic Egyptian time. And here is something similar to that. It's just a simple reed tube, right, with some holes drilled into it. That's a piece of technology. And these guys are breathing in this way that is circular. So they're able to draw the breath in, hold it into their mouth, and keep the sound going without pause, endless. And did you notice that the fellow sitting next here with the tea, or he was really moved by it? And I'm thinking, that's really interesting, because he's probably one of the musicians, and he's played this stuff 1,000 times, and he's sitting there like grooving on it. And you're wondering, how is that possible after a lifetime of playing the Argul, that you would have this listening experience, okay? So anything else that you notice? One more thing. Anybody? Blurt it out. What about this thing that they're holding? Obviously there's a piece that goes in here, and the source is the mouth, right? Anything else? Okay.
They're achieving trance.
You already spoke.
So I didn't say that.
What about the sound itself? Did you have any feelings about the sound that was being made? I mean, it was very bright. It was very nasally. It was, yes, right.
It was free and unbridled.
Yeah, it was floating, right? And you could sense it in the other guy's emotional response to the sound. He went, when it came down, he went like that. You know, it was there, right? So music has this effect. Maybe not all music, I don't know, but this music definitely does. So Deidre Lothridge, who's a professor at Northeastern, talks about 40,000 years of music technology and has a course called From Bone Flute to Auto-Tune. Okay, and we go back 40,000 years, all the way down here on the left side is the bone flute. 40,000 years old. It's just, well, maybe human bone with some holes drilled in it. Okay? An instrument, a device. That device is an extension in some way of the human body. Okay? And so going back to the Argul and the gentleman playing, you can see it's not in the technology, it's in the body. Okay? The technology is just this thing doesn't do anything. Okay? But it takes a lot of knowledge on different levels. For example, check this. You think that that's a good musician? Raise your hand. Okay? I think I do. All right? There's something else. What is his instrument? It's a straw, a plastic straw, which are no longer allowed, by the way. But yes, he has one. And yes, he has carved into it a few holes, and the thing is beautiful. Why is it beautiful? It's not the straw, folks. Okay? It's not the straw. It's the human. All right? It's the human. Now, I'm going to make some statements. They're probably crazy, probably wrong. It doesn't matter. That's the great thing about being artistic and artful. You know? I don't have to really have a methodology. Here it is. Musicians own their sound in body and action. Take it or leave it. Nuanced and interlaced messages are communicated directly to the listener, viewer's body. Okay? Listening and experiencing music is not simply a mental activity, it's a physical activity. As F. Murray Schafer said, that sound is touching at a distance. It's about sensing distance and feeling things. Okay? The act of hearing is immediate compared to that of visual interpretation. We can turn away, I can turn away from you, I do not see you anymore, but I cannot turn away from sound. It engulfs me. The performance becomes a shared experience. Okay, performance is one of our topics, guys. You know, why do we go to performances? And I can tell you, if you go this evening to hear the Steve Reich, the Colin Curry ensemble play music for 18 musicians, you're going to be stunned by it. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. Stunned. This is one of the seminal figures of the 20th century composers. Okay, the piece Music for 18 Musicians transformed people's lives, including mine. I hope I can show it. Through empathy, the listener becomes the performer. Oh, that's an interesting idea, right? And it's true. Whenever we see a sporting events, we don't just feel it, we run with the player, or we shoot the basket. We occupy the body of the athlete. And we do so in sound. Sound is a direct communicator. It's very intense and deeply layered. For a period of time, the listener occupies another space within the human Umwelt. Greg?
Environment.
Thank you. How many people know what an Umwelt is? So out of biology, right? Umwelt is an interesting one because we take all of the senses we have, hearing, touch, smell, all of these things have limits, constraints, links of possibility, and we combine them and we create our reality, our world, and that's a human Umwelt. But the bat and the dog and the bee and the flea all have seriously completely different Umwelts. Okay? What I'm saying here is that when you experience performance, and when I say performance here in this talk, I mean great experience of sound. When you experience that, you are injected into another's Umwelt. This happens with art as well. This happens when we go into an art exhibit and we're transformed by what's there. We're transfixed. But here's the cool thing. We can leave. Right? It's not so science fiction-y. Because we don't want to become Kim Kardashian, right? But we might like to occupy her Umwelt for like a minute. I don't mean that provocatively. Sorry. The three drummers, the physicality, and this new addition, which is the extension, the baton, right? The extension of the arm, the addition of energy, right? The object, the instrument, the technology, right? A rock, a stick, whatever it is, right? 2001. Boom, 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 da-da. Okay. The greatest music synthesizer we know, the human voice. Okay? So let's leave technology and go back to the voice just a second. On the left is the singer Ima Sumac. On the right is a sound spectrogram analyzing her voice as she sings. How do you read the spectrogram? Well, it's done in frequency, and over on the right-hand side there, right this way, 500 hertz to 4,000 hertz. You know, humans can hear from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. But notice it's just in this small range that the energy of the human voice exists. Not coincidentally, that same energy is where human speech is most audible. So let's watch the energy unfold, and you will see one thing. Human singing voice is not a single note or tone. It's a complex mixture of noise, tone, upper frequencies, lower frequencies, etc.
Thanks to Ima Sumac of Peru for a thrilling performance.
Okay, so what can I say? Do you have any quick questions about what you just saw? Do you understand what you just saw? Okay, that's important to go forward. So the human voice is a complex thing. I'm going to suggest that everything I'm going to talk about from here on out has to do with that fact. And I want to point out again that it only occupies a small region of the frequency space that humans, our Umwelt, is much wider than that. But the musical Umwelt, so to speak, is only this wide. It's very small, in fact.
Great.
Are we running out of time?
No, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
In people who study music, like you do, and scholars of music, and when does something considered vocals or singing as opposed to like making sounds with your voice or your tongue or your other parts of, like, is there a distinction between vocal singing, and when does it become body music or instrumentation, or is there any different categories?
We've got some more slides, but I think that the short answer is that there's a difference between singing and making noises.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that Ima Sumac, when she made noises, that the energy was everywhere. It was like a wash, like a waterfall. But when she sang, we saw these bands of frequencies. And those are due to the fact that you have the glottal frequency generator, and it's making harmonic sounds. And so wind instruments like this are also harmonic, and as well as string instruments, they all exhibit harmonic qualities. But percussion instruments are by nature quite percussive. What I'm pointing out here is that the human voice can do it all. And it does. And now I would say no one sees the difference. I mean, if you listen to Kendrick Lamar, very carefully, you listen to someone who understands noise as much as singing, as much as speaking. It's all one thing. So the human voice and breath provides a model for extensions of performance outside the body.
単サバ。ピン。パン。
Ini masemekele ibwa seniti. Eke. Ini masemekele ibwa seniti. Eke. Ana eke ana kuduba ana eke ana kuduba ana eke ana kuduba ana eke. Ini masemekele ibwa seniti. Le ana kuduba le eke ana kuduba le eke ana kuduba le eke.
So literally, the voice is transformed into a talking drum. Okay? This extension of instruments out of the voice into the world is a pattern that occurs globally. Get the idea? Everything defined through the human voice there. The instrument itself is speaking. Technology. Tools emerge from human activities. They have been transformed. I'm going to speed up so we can have this conversation. But keep me intact. Tools emerge from human activities. They have been transforming and screwing with us since the beginning. But the tools can then take on a life of their own and even remake the tool maker, right? So it's not a one-way street. I didn't make this and then I was done. No, it came back and remade me. And then I remade it, and then it remade me, and before long I maybe lost track of this, and I became, a modern-day clarinet. I was making this PowerPoint, and then PowerPoint started throwing up these suggestions to me. Rewrite your it was an AI kind of thing, right? Here's your 12 choices for design, right? Everybody's seen that? So now it's like from the top to the bottom. They've been screwing with this on the bottom. I don't know. I prefer it the other way around, but then the technology goes in a circle. This one seemed to work. Yeah, it's circular, right? We have technology we build, we emerge from human activities, and then it screws with us, and we didn't know that the little blue Twitter thing was going to now rule existence. Okay, we didn't know that. Part 2. First, any quick questions about that? All right, we're getting somewhere, maybe. Enter the composer Edmund Campion, director of the Center for New Music and Audio Technologies. Back to the Future and the 70s forward. This is the crux of the deal. Okay, this is the day that you get to see something that you've never seen before, right? Something that happened to me in a pre-internet space of time that you know nothing about. You may read about it, but you don't know it. I was there. I was in the room. In 1971, I was an aspiring musician starting high school. It was at a moment during late stages of the Vietnam War when the great musician Edgar Winter recorded and performed this song.
By some people who
Vietnam protest song. Sounds like music, doesn't it? Right? It sounds predictable to us. We recognize it. We may, even if we know something about styles, we may go back to New Orleans, we may go back to gospel. We realize the blues, we realize all these influences. Seems like music to me as I was taught it. I would not have dedicated myself to music because of that, even though I do love it. Okay? So what happened? The next year, in 1972, the ARC 2600 synthesizer was released. There were only 100 made. Edgar Winter got one. What happened? Next year, Frankenstein is released. The Edgar Winter Group, 1973. Little Eddie Campion, what do you want for Christmas? Mom, I want an ARC 2600. Can I get one of those? I gotta have one. In fact, I did. It was broken, but I did manage to get one, and I was able to DIY it to work. And I became really part of the generation. Explosion. I used the PowerPoint suggestion. These phenomenal transforms in music making during the 60s and 70s were largely due to arrival of new tools and attitudes towards technology, but not entirely. We saw the war. We knew it was disruptive, just like our current moment in a lot of ways. It all coincided with most influential years as a young musician. For me personally, I mistakenly thought this was what music was about. I thought that's what music was. It was a space of transformation and research and change. And it was people like Edgar Winter that completely blew my mind, because one year they were doing this and the next this. Let's go back and let's listen to Herbie Hancock. I'd call that jazz, would you? Yeah. Would you call it jazz? I call that jazz. That's straight ahead jazz. This young 24-year-old's right on top of it, right? King of jazz in 1964. What was he doing after 20 years of this technological assault? Erie released Rocket in 1983. Transform. Okay? In the 80s, the group like Kraftwerk invented new aesthetics to meet the arrival of the utopic embrace of the technological in music. This is an interesting one. eventually rid themselves of the human, a logical conclusion of their experiment involving the full embrace of utopic technologies for music. Today, pervasive technologies envelop and even define the musicians. For most, like Beck, human-machine connection is key to the work that they do. We weren't not going to play that thing to run out of time. Just look at the setting and what surrounds the musicians.
Ready?
What has the tectonic shift in music technology, human machine, left of the 65-year-old pre-internet composer Edmund Kennedy? We're almost done. You notice in the Beck that technology is now hybridized completely. It's integrated with the human again. Whereas with the craft work, there was a separation, there was an acknowledgement, even to the point of a kind of hilarity in a way, that it was so extreme. It was kind of funny, to us. It wasn't funny to them, I don't think, at that time. But anyway, they're still playing out there. But what about this guy, or what about any artist? And that's what I want to talk to you guys about, at least one of the points. So here I am at a new media center in New York City collaborating with Claudia Hart. I'm playing the piano, and there's a whole lot going on, and suddenly it's all media. It's all stuff. It's rocket,
I'm sure those are not the right words. I'm sure those are not the right words. Those are not the right words. I'm sure those are not the right words. Those are not the right words. I must be Mabel after all. I must be Mabel after all. I will have to be Mabel. I must be Mabel after all. I've ever come this lesson. Ever come this lesson. Ever
So that's a kind of crazy statement.
No.
You know anything about the Bauhaus? You can see it in the costumes they're wearing are rip-offs of the Oscar Schlemmer. Everything is borrowed from history in that piece. Everything is mixing together in a total hybridity. And here's the key word, collaborative. We are collaborative now, and we are sharing our art making amongst ourselves and within ourselves and with you. The listener is now an interactive participant, right? All of these things have come in our lifetime, and I'm not going to show that well. We're online. We're in VR environments. We're mixing data of dancers between professional wrestlers and ballerinas. We're hybridizing new creatures online who are dancers. That's Claudia Hart, by the way. And now I go back to where I started, which is I'm interested in ancient technologies because of this very reason. Okay? these things are where it comes from, and it still is the thing. It takes a human being, it takes the processing, it takes an idea. It doesn't take a piece of reed instrument necessarily. I can use a straw, but I have to practice, right? So I went to Korea, and I did practice. This is a little bitty instrument from Korea. It's a little version. It's just a decorative thing. Take a look at it, and think of it like a ship that goes through time, and it carries with it not just an instrument, but a lot of messages. Okay, just pass that around. Try not to drop it. It's like it's a coffee table piece. Anyway, I composed for that. It took me 2 years to do that. I wanted to learn these instruments, not because I have a special connection to Korean culture. It's because I was invited to do it, and also I really understood these things as special forms of technology. And they were just as important to me as MIDI controllers or sensors on my body or any of these things. So here's Natural Frequencies with Professor Greg Niemeyer, Ken Goldberg, and Ed Campion in 2015. We took over the Carillon with data from seismic information coming live from the Geologic Center.
Seismograph from the geography department.
Geography department provided the data, and we, Greg did the lighting, Meyer Sound did the sound, and we had live performance. Somehow I lost my. I think that's. Sound went away. Well, that's probably a cue. Because you can see it's totally multimedia. So, finally, we're here. Lisa Wymore, Greg Niemeyer, and Ed Campion are artists who do what?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Greg Niemeyer is going to come up and join us in conversation as those who are out in watching the stream. Greg Niemeyer is a professor in art practice, and he's my co-teacher in this class. And we're going to go into conversation now. And I will be monitoring the Q&A as well. Right. I think we're on. This is working? Yeah. All right. That was so great. Thank you. And it was bringing me back the craft work and so many of the Herbie Hancock. And I was thinking about being a kid. Yeah.
That was a beautiful talk, thank you.
Yeah.
There's so many themes that came up. One of them came up as appropriation or appreciation of different musical traditions. And there were so many moments where you brought in music from different cultures and from yours. And how does that work for you? What are the dynamics of collaboration across cultures?
Well, I don't want to disparage the idea of identities and culture or all of these discourses, but my primarily connection to all of them is through the materiality of sound. And I connect immediately to what's going on in that materiality, and I learn how to do sound, and I learned really about that human quality from that. Certainly that was not something that came from the conservatory education.
Right, and then maybe it's through the study of the materiality too. As we were talking about artifacts, we were talking about what is in the archive and what we leave and make in the world. Our materiality is an extension of who we are and our culture. And so in coming in contact and working with these technologies in their material forms, you can gain so much information in exchange at that level.
Yeah, what was it how would I, give me a second to put that, I'm not sure. Maybe another question. I had my mind somewhere. It had something to do with, when I was 17, I looked at, Herbie Hancock, the 1964 one, and I said, I got to do that. And I studied my chord progressions, and I did all this. And I realized at some point that I was just mimicking a cultural identity. Like, I was not a jazz musician. I had no reason to be doing that. And that's when I discovered this idea of sound and materiality and exchange, and what I would call really it comes down to research. And that's what I was saying when, in the 70s, what happened to me was I got blown away because I thought, that's it. I don't have to be a rock musician. I don't have to be a jazz musician. I don't have to have a genre at all. I can be a researcher musician. I can look into material, and I can find something on the edges of that Umwelt, which hopefully if you were to come to one of my performances, which you can in February, if you look around at the Cal performances, you can come and you can experience a little bit of, Ed Campion's Umwelt. And you might say, I'm getting out of here. But that's okay, it's me, It's a sharing.
Well, there's something I really resonated to what you were talking about, how technology changes our bodies and we then transform the technology. And I just got taken back to being a kid lying on the ground at my house listening to Jean-Michel Jarre.
There you go.
And it was just, you talk about music touching you. I don't know why that electronic music just really, there's something about the frequency or what's going on there that really spoke to me too. I had a kind of a waking up moment around that and got very much into how technology influences us, but particularly and what I shared on Thursday, more digital, more visual. But how the body fits in there was
Well, it's the
always a great
nature of
question.
sound, I would say, because we know that when you look at a painting, a great painting, you have to be with it, right? You have to enter it and be with it pretty deeply. But sound, you can enter on any number of levels. You can walk by it, and it's still engulfing you. It can be how you do the dishes or do your studies, which I know it is for a lot of people in this room. You need that sound. But it can also be something that directly mainlines to your emotional states, right? It can be like the ride of your life, if you know how to listen. So that's what I think that's the big difference. It's immediate.
Mm-hmm.
And the art world has always depended on, it's a thinking space. It's always depended on deep thinking about what is Egon Schiele doing there exactly. It's not just the picture of the woman or the prostitute, right? It's something else. It's like, what's going on? Or what did Van Gogh do? What is he doing?
More in relationship to the artist before, but music does that too.
Yes, he does.
It's referencing and commenting and situating itself in its milieu and how it is different and evolving.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
And we often do not think of Van Gogh as a researcher. We think of him as a crazy painter who's invented something wild and crazy. No, he's a researcher, thinking about color and thinking about the meaning of the material that he's working with.
Yeah.
He's serious about the research, there's no question.
Yeah, there's those huge gaps that we experience between the way the world looks and the way we experience it, and
Well, the way we're told about it.
and the way what we're told is all about, what it actually is doing, and those gaps we try to bridge through creative research sometimes, and then when we find a connection, sometimes we can present that in an audience. One sound that I heard that I never forget was the sound of tons of rocks being dropped in the middle of the night while a dam was being built deep in Kenya, and that's because the dam is being built 24 hours, 7 days a week, and so these people were working there were bringing rocks to fill the dam, up, and it was a huge operation. I was standing in the middle of pitch black night, and all around me were these 20-ton trucks moving those rocks around and dumping them and loading them, and people screaming and yelling at each other, saying, put them here, put them there, in a mix of Chinese and Swahili. And it was quite an intense experience because it was the screaming of the world. It was the screaming of global capital. It was the screaming of, rocks being pulled out of the earth and the world being changed to fit our needs, and very much to the detriment of the people who live there. And so that sound is a sound of injustice as well. And so that sound has been haunting me and propelling me to keep making me work. And it's a very uncomfortable sound sometimes. And so I was wondering if there's any sounds, speaking of purpose, any sounds that propel you and inform your purpose.
There are, but you fell into the umwelt of the machines and the rocks and the whole thing.
I did.
And everything you thought about made sense with that sound. It spoke.
It spoke, but it didn't speak something
didn't
that I
say
wanted
it's
to hear.
nice.
It wasn't nice, no. It was
It
not
screamed
nice.
at
Yeah,
you.
yeah,
Yeah.
it
For
screamed.
me, I'd have to say it was nice. It was going to a concert of a group called Weather Report in the 1970s and hearing Jaco Pastorius occupy a stage for 45 minutes with a solo bass. And he just played, and there were 500 people, and we were all crying. It was one of the great moments of my life. And again, at that age, I thought, this is what music is, right? We'll be doing this every week for the rest of our life. Nope. I happened to hear something that day.
It's so interesting looking at your two examples that they're both working with what we would call machines in a way, the human and the machine of the cello,
Yeah.
and the human and the bass, sorry, and then the human with the machines, the bulldozer. Both had different intentions for use, but are totally emergent with us as humans transforming our environment for purposes of sonic beauty or experience or being moved at an emotional level, or using the human and the machine to change something that is going to affect some kind of market system or monetary situation or supposed need for water, but maybe it's not for the community. But that's an interesting, because of this topic of human and machine, just to see the interplay that we have with our machines, but they have totally different, if there can be such different intention for them, and yet they impact us so deeply.
It's completely recursive now. We're circulating.
But do you think I think it's always been recursive, don't you think?
I do, but it's different because of the AI thing and because of what we're getting back from the machines and how we have to defend ourselves now from them. And so the idea of my Center for New Music and Audio Technologies that I direct, the idea of its origin cannot be the idea of its continuation. We are not providing, we do not have a utopic vision, Kraftwerkian vision of what technology will give us in music. We do not. What we do have is a sharing aesthetic, an aesthetic of making things that we share with the world, both as artistic artifacts, but also as tools that others can use, and they're free. They're not involved in trying to build a commodified entity that we will then make more of what we already have. We really want to show that there are limits, there are extensions of the envelope to what is possible with music. And here's, I guess, the inversion of what I've been saying. I actually believe that what happened to me in the 1970s is what music is about and what art is about. We must change. And even though we might like Beethoven, and we might think Beethoven is fantastic, which I do, it's not going to be sufficient to deal with what we need to do now. We have to deal with the stuff in front of us, and that stuff is technological, it is media-driven, and now it has, I wouldn't say sentience, but it has something going on, and we have to be careful about it, and we have to deal with it. We can't say, oh, it's all wonderful. It's not.
Is that what's sort of driving sort of the Cinemaps? Because I'm an artist that works a lot with off-the-shelf kind of technology, or somebody's made it for me, and my company and I will build something with that. As opposed to Cinema, I think is really about building something new, not worrying if it's going to be sold or not, and really sharing it. But it's is there something about that to a freedom? Because I have a sort of a freedom too of using a technology that wasn't intended, like using camera systems, not for gaming, but for different practices of my art making. But there's something about that, the interplay between things that are already built and made and artists kind of subverting them, or artists in Cinema trying to actually stay out of that whole market-driven system and build something new.
Hard to know what we're a community. People do different things in the community. But I can say from my own point of view that I have the capability of making a lowrider like a Chicano, but I'm not a Chicano. I could do it. I could build a car. I could reposition it. I could add hydraulics, and I could make all kinds of physical modulations. I could repeat the patterns of that work, and that would do nothing for me ultimately. That would be
Because it's not part of your
that's
culture
sort of
and what
like
you're doing. And
I don't know, like a genre or something. I could do a genre.
That would be an appropriation, right? It would miss its
Appropriation,
purpose.
but it wouldn't mean anything.
Yeah, it wouldn't be.
Except it would be kind of offensive maybe to some people. But
You can do your own thing then.
yeah, but in the case of SynMat, we're talking about a DIY kind of thing in which you get to extend your fingers the way you think you want them to be, right? You get to extend and build objects around you, hybridized technologies that are really, really peculiar to your art form. And that is the key, I think. And that's something similar. It is identity. It is culture. But it's a very different thing from the low-riding culture of the Chicanos, where there's a lot of identity, group identity. I think SynMat is a diffuse set of individuals who are doing very different things, but they are bound maybe by this one thing, that you're going to invent something and you're going to invent something. So
less so about building. Well, I guess the culture that's being built is a culture of individual expression through the technology that's being created.
yeah, and also it's destined to failure for most, because one person cannot be a full cultural entity. I mean, by occupying the world of jazz, one is assured to get that level, right? To occupy that genre. But if you have no genre, you're only occupying your research. It's very independent. And so what you can get maybe are little, what the French say, the étincelles, the little sparks, and we like to go and find sparks, and we can't really claim that I'm always sparking, folks, because I'm not.
There's different times need different sounds and need us to listen to different new things, like you said earlier. And to be able to hear those things, sometimes we need to have a new aesthetic that is attuned to new things, but also sometimes we need to have new instruments that are able to amplify new kinds of dynamics and bring them to the foreground. And in doing so, we can give ourselves, but also others, voice and help others find voices themselves, to express things that never were quite expressed before.
Just think of the saxophone.
Yeah.
Out of the 19th century, this amazing invention, maybe one of the greatest inventions of all time. This thing is so loud, right? And now it completely transformed the world, many genres of music. And that's still a potential, I believe. Instrument building is really where it's at. That's what we call new luthier. And that might involve technologies and combinations, or it also might involve just physical things.
Let's see if we can work with some questions, yeah?
Yeah, I just have one more comment to talk about with that last piece you were showing. We touched upon it with Ralph Lundham's work and his sort of theater of many things, of video and sound and singing and music, and it reminded me of kind of this total theater that the Bauhaus movement was talking about, and these moments where I think people, well, I guess it's always been going on in different cultural places, artistic places, but bringing in all the multiplicities of ideas into one location, and not differentiating if it's music or theater or dance. It's just all experiential, and in some ways, some of our practices in the metaverse and things are doing that too. These sites for this
but we don't know what
complexity.
it's for yet,
Mm-hmm.
right? And the artists are always the first people to sort of arrive and try things out and push edges, and then it begins to unveil itself. And also, we are kind of watching over it in a way to point out when things go wrong with this stuff. We're like we're the canaries in the coal mine.
When we dive in and see what it says it's doing and experience
Try and
what
do
it's
different
actually
things
doing
with
and
it.
try and explore the friction between the two. So let's see if there's any questions, thoughts that you want to share as we're hanging out here chatting about the drama of technology and how it can make and unmake our world. Any thoughts, questions you want to ask, bring to the foreground? Nina, do you have one?
Yeah, I just.
Hang on 1 second. I'm going to bring the mic for the folks online. Thank you.
That instrument out there somewhere, maybe you can just leave it at the door, or if you have,
I think you're keeping it. You seem to be happy with it.
You were just going to see if I were going to remember.
Thank you so much. This was really a great presentation, and I really enjoyed the way you told this story of your uniform record locator. One thing I've been trying to wrap my mind around, and I've heard different explanations of over the years, was why some people cannot connect to some of the electronic music or the more like that transformation that you pinpointed. And from my point of view as an ethnomusicologist, the difference between the oud players from Egypt, the straw player from Bulgaria or Romania, somewhere.
It was hard to say. I think that's a Highlands, the Scottish Highlands.
Scottish, okay. And Herbie Hancock's first jazz piano piece, compared to his second one and many of the other later pieces, the only way I could explain it is prosody. It's like where prosody, like the connection between language and music. And with electronic music, the possibilities are endless. That you almost lose that connection. But I'm wondering how do you understand or appreciate that distinction, and is there an art of keeping electronic music connected to that linguistic origin that you can help us appreciate?
Yeah, that's just such a deep question. You know, that's a whole field. I think I mean, if we think back to the Frankenstein thing with Edgar Winter, we can see that they didn't know what they were doing. You know, they just got this thing, and he was, you know, it's great.
I think there's something interesting. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, but just to put it clearly, I think there from an ethnomusicology sort of perspective, perhaps, I believe when any sound comes to a person, it's always dealt in relationship to the cultural position from which they receive the sound, right? And so it's very easy and very natural for people to have a badly negative valence on any kind of sound, whether it's electronic or anything that's like your noisy one, right? You have the negative valence, but you recognize something rich in that thing, right? You still faced it.
Yeah.
Right? Now, an artist knows how to do that, but another person would just get out of there. I got to get away from this. This is terrible. Or the same thing with electronics. And I don't think it's necessarily things in the circuits, but one point is that loudspeakers are the enemy. Okay? Loudspeakers do not, it's not Herbie Hancock playing that piano. It's a loudspeaker generating frequencies that give your brain the image that it's Herbie Hancock playing the piano. The piano is not. That's electronic sound, and it always comes out of the loudspeakers in exactly the same diffusion pattern. It's not changing. Whereas an instrument like this, when you lift your fingers off the holes, the sound completely changes its directionality. It's an acoustic phenomenon, and that's part of its beauty, and this is lost with loudspeakers.
That's what I was going to pick up on, the sense of loss. I think that some people are very attuned to that there's something that's gained when we use digital technology or other forms of technology beyond just kind of analog or from our bones or something like that, or made from skins and hides and things that come from our world, from this natural place. Not that technology comes from our world too, but it's mined and highly processed. And it begins to, I think, allow us to do really interesting things, but it also compresses and we lose part of our humanness maybe. And I know that I have that feeling too, but I enjoy, I don't know, there's something about the frequency or the way that the machine talks to me that I'm open to or found that I like. But I can imagine other people would find that loss is too deep, or a resonance between something deeply felt in the body and something that's been so manipulated is just too far of a divide. Perhaps.
Well, I'll just point out that the age of electronic music is basically done, and that we're moving towards this more functional hybridity in which maybe human beings begin to be those electronic machines themselves. and that recursion, that cycling is changing the whole way we even think of what music is, and so maybe the loudspeakers will go away, and it'll all become human again, but it will be, I don't know, like a Star Trek episode? I don't know.
Right. Our supercomputers in our pockets are really changing us.
Yeah.
We can do one more
Start
question,
looking
I
like we look
think.
in the metaverse.
That's right,
You
we
know.
gotta have this saying on
We'll
our
have
head.
armless, legless kind of ways of bobbing about. So I don't know about that. You had a question. Yeah.
Yes, I think you want to.
Yeah.
And how are we doing?
And we're gonna, this will be our last question, and then we'll wrap up.
Is it working? Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah. Hi, guys. Sorry that most students haven't been able to answer your question, but I mean, if any students volunteer my time.
Go for it.
The word resonance comes to mind, and especially with those men having coffee and playing the oud, was it?
Argul.
Argul. I was there. You know, they took me a place. That wasn't a cultural appropriation in my own private. That was a resonance in me, and with the Indian music as well. Oh yes, this is yes, and so I'm thinking about resonance with the transistor. We have this new thing, the transistor, and everything's made out of this, resistors and capacitors and transistors. And there's also this multipole thing of repulsion and desire. You know, you hear this jarring. What you were doing, breaking the third wall of saying no. You're not supposed to say no in improv. And your whole piece was about no. I just wrote a piece about no too. It's so cool. But you know, there's revulsion against this, and the rocks. You know, the sound of these rocks destroying the villages by the water coming up and swamping them out. This revulsion and desire. And when you did the Herbie Hancock 1 and Herbie Hancock 2, 2 is like good day. But in Impressible Age, there you can go through the saddle point from Volson pop into desire. You know, I really like motor music. You put a bunch of motors together and mic them. You know, I want that. I don't know what it's an awful sound, but I love it. So I'm with you when you say the end of electronic music and the discrepancy of speakers. Of course, we're all listening to speakers now. My voice is mediated by speakers, and the spatial distribution is lost. You know, but if I'm not over here, well, anyway, whatever. But there's a resonance with all this stuff, and I think
you let me. That's amazing.
I just wanted to. Yeah, I mean, it's a hodgepodge of thoughts, but
well, resonance is a word that we all keep close to our hearts. It is so key, and it's one thing that electronic sound often misses. It's a continuant. It has to be generated with energy. And resonance is something that hangs, and it hangs psychologically, and it hangs when the drummers, the three Japanese, it's all about resonance.
I forgot to mention one really important word, and that's feedback.
Yeah.
If you have resonance and feedback, you have kind of an intelligent system, and the feedback of seeing this thing in the machine or this sound from the Middle Eastern instruments and going there. I mean, it's like a tropism. We're walking around in a cave. We're feeling the wall. Oh yeah, that's the exit. I smell the air. There's a resonance with the air, and then the feedback is walking to the air and leaving the cave. And we're walking through this blind cave. We don't know where we are, and we hear sounds, and we like them, and we don't like them, and then we like the ones we don't like. And that's the feedback, and that creates an intelligent system. So maybe hyper-feedback, hyper-resonance, and the feedback of creating intelligence, I think, is where we're at.
Absolutely. Ed, you're amazing.
Oh, never.
Ed has come, I think, has attended over 10,000 lectures at UC Berkeley, and I'm not kidding.
Well,
Thank you. You got something to say.
oh,
I think we're gonna wrap up on that beautiful note of resonance and thinking about that, thinking about what resonates for you, and that's gonna be part of your assignment too. You guys are gonna be picking music and songs that have meaning for you and leave you with a feeling.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.